So typically, and from our experience working on the telco edge, this is most of the cases belong to what I'm showing here. But again, I admit that there can be other use cases not following the use convention. So let me start from the right to left. What we have, I mean, without any edge in the story, what we have currently classically in any CSP is some sort of core sites or central DCs or national DCs. So you may call it site, and when someone says site, this gives some sort of a legacy impression. Like that's a classical site that used to host, TDFs and media gateways and this kind of classical things, working with SIGTRAN and this kind of SS7 and stuff. But nowadays, these sites are either replaced or restructured as a DC. So you always hear the term central DC or national DC. So these are the backbone of the network, hosting most of the core functions. And then going a little bit to the border or to the edge, you always hear the term near edge. So near edge, in a simple definition, that's the first hop after the regional and central DCs. It may map to the aggregation points, to the OLTs. It all depends on case by case on the operator side. But normally, when someone say near edge, that's the nearest point to the regional and central DCs. And at the end, you have a use case. For example, if you are going to sell a certain product to the enterprise segment, and that use case required a 10 millisecond latency. Well, if the regional DCs can fulfill the 10 millisecond, voila, you have the case served by the regional. If you have the use case served by the near edge, then use the near edge. So that's why I always recommend, before giving any namings, before doing any investments, you have to understand the anatomy of your network. You have to do an end-to-end latency assessment to understand where is the spot, or where is the port, or where is the point of presence that you will deploy your edge, right? Because you might not need to go to a deep edge, while your near edge can fulfill the use cases, right? Okay, so near edge maps normally to the aggregation and the OLT. The term far edge, and sometimes people use deep edge in the telco context, commonly refer to cell sites or the points. So that's a far or deep direction from the telco perspective, because normally the telco port starts with one hop after the terminal. So even people working on the mobile network, they know that. So we always like draw this mobile, and then whatever comes after the mobile, that's the telco port. So starting from the access or from the cell site, that's the deepest thing that the telco can go. So commonly, the near edge and the far edge construct what we can call a telco edge or provider edge. That's the common case, but I'm sure there are other contents from other maybe vendors doing different tracks, but that's from my experience and from my perception and I would say assessment that I did on from various direction in the market. Other than that, we have the enterprise edge. So the enterprise edge, think of it, it's like an edge as in a box. For example, you can lease a certain enterprise, like a thin CPU, a thin server that include a full private 5G. So that's a kind of an enterprise edge. The UCPE, as part of the SD-WAN use case, the universal CPE, a kind of CPE that can host application, that's a kind of enterprise edge. And then we can go, you can go a little bit more deeper, and you go to the device edge itself, and that typically the IoT gateway, the devices, and some people put also UCPE as part of the device edge. And there you can start to hear terms like fog computing, but I would say fog computing is not really part of the telco framework, because again, as I told you, most probably the telco momentum stops either on the far deep edge or on the enterprise edge. So I end with one slide, and then I'll go to the questions. I just brought a simple definition that I personally like, okay? And that was, I think, mentioned in one of the blogs of the HCMEC in 3 years back in 2018. So that was from Alex Dresnick, the chairman of the MEC ISG in 2018. Simply, edge is any location in your network where compute and related infrastructure platform software are offered that is closer to user than your default data center. So you remember the default data center, which was regional and central. So if you go one hop near to the user, then you are in the edge. And that makes sense, right? Because near edge, far edge, enterprise edge, device edge, you go one hop below your regional central DCs, that's the edge. So it's a very simple definition. So if you go closer to your user, other than going beyond your regional central DC, then you are in the edge.